Good morning. Welcome to Bible class. Looking at heroes of what we can learn from them, especially wanting to provide opportunity for us to think together, talk together, and discuss what applications, what does the faith of these people that we're studying from a long time ago, what difference does it make to us? What changes from the path we're on now might we ought to be making as we consider the genuine faith of these people? I tried to make the case last class, that Abraham has a distinctive position in the doctrine, and that comes, I think, from two facts. One is the historical significance, his life itself, the faith that he had, and then the second one would be the doctrine that God chose to build on his case study, on his example. And I don't have numbers ready to present to you today. I plan to circle back to that next class period and go back again and look a little bit at the big picture of Abraham and where he fits. But if you just compare how many times Abraham is mentioned in the rest of the Bible compared to other characters in the Old Testament, he's not the most. David gets a lot of mentions, but David had a lot of material talked about him. The events of his life, the portion of his life that is recorded in Scripture, is humongous, even compared to Abraham. But you pick any other person, you pick Noah, you pick some of the great people of faith, Elijah, Elisha, the prophets, and it's a dwarfing number that Abraham has mentioned, which I would suggest illustrates how significant he is as a character. So we observed that you got the historical story itself, you got his place in the doctrine, the religion, which largely stems from the promise that God made to him. We talked a good bit about the promise. I hope that if you are already not aware of the significance of the promise, that you'll circle back to that and dwell on that. That is a huge part of understanding God's plan of salvation, understanding the story of the Bible. And then I want to look today at the major episodes in his life, and particularly at the end of each one, pause and discuss, how impressive is that? What should we make of that? What should we be doing about that? So the call. One of the questions I asked you at the last class period to engage with me on, please, was the call, was about the call, and so if you read just the Genesis account, you probably get one impression. When you look at all the inspired writers who comment on it, you get a fuller impression, a different impression. I still remember how excited I was when I discovered this reality, and so if you haven't uncovered this yet, I hope you're in for some excitement. The call. Where would we start? I guess I'm outlining this again. So you got the call, the sojourn, the child, which I'm going to call, that's also the wait, right? And then sacrifice, which is also the test, the big test. So let's start with the call. And let's go back to Genesis chapter 11, where a gentleman named Terah is introduced in the context of a genealogy post-Babel. And verse 26 is where we'll pick up. And Terah lived 70 years and became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the records of the generations of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. And Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran. I don't know if that's he married his niece or a different Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. And Sarai was barren, she had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. And they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. And they went as far as Haran and settled there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So if introduction to this family, you could probably sense as you're reading along, they talk about Eber and Peleg lived 30 years, became the father of Ru, and he lived this many years, and then he died. If you're reading along there, and all of a sudden the author decides to tell a little bit more information about these characters, you might notice that, okay, these people must be important. Maybe we're going to camp out here for a while. But certainly by chapter 12, you would get that impression, because now there's a whole story unfolding. Now, if you just took at face value the description there, why did they pick up and leave Ur of the Chaldees and go to Haran? What's that? It just says they did. Terah took his son Abram and Lot, the son, and the grandson, and the Sarai, and Terah took Abram, and then it mentions all these people, and they went together from Ur of the Chaldeans. Sounds like Terah decided to move. Any other observations? How old is Abram? Okay, where do you get that? Yeah, 12:4. Okay, so at the point they left Ur of the Chaldeans, we don't know how old he is. We know that Terah is 70 years old when he has Abram. Okay, but we don't know how old Abram is when they pick up and leave Ur of the Chaldees. All right, we already know that Abram is married. He's been living there married for a while, and Sarai, his wife, is barren. That storyline's already established. All right, let's go to chapter 12 now. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So just all of a sudden, out of the blue it seems, Yahweh appears to Abram and makes this extraordinary statement. What are the component promises revealed at this point? Okay, so there's a few in there. The land promise is subtle, is it not? Leave the country you're from, go forth from your country to the land which I will show you. What does that mean? Right. So if I took one of you somewhere and say, hey, I want to show you the land, would you automatically understand that I'm going to give it to you, that it's going to become your legal property? So I don't know if something's lost in translation there, if there was some elaboration. He clearly is telling him to pick up and move, and he's going to show him this place where he wants them to go. He's going to make a great nation. He's going to bless him. That's the headline of this conversation is, I'm going to bless you. He repeats that over and over again. I'm going to make your name great. You will be a blessing. I'm going to bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. And then the beautiful promise that we all benefit from, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. No mention yet of the descendants, no mention yet of the son, no mention explicitly about the land and defining it and that it will be yours. But Abram is being called. Now, where does this calling take place? Haran. Keep reading. Verse 4. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. So it's clear from verses 4 and 5 that this calling, recorded in 12:1 through 3, occurred in Haran. Because Abram's response after he gets the call is to pick up his stuff, gather his stuff and his people, including his wife and his nephew Lot, and they left Haran. So again, fair to say from just reading the text that his dad apparently decided to leave Ur of the Chaldees, took the whole family with him. The dad dies in Haran. One of the brothers had already died, and they're there for some period of time in Haran, and then God calls him and says, I want you to pick up and leave, and I'm going to show you where you're going. Trust me, it's going to be great. You're going to be blessed. It's going to be wonderful. All right. Now let's go to Acts chapter 7. What does Acts chapter 7 have to do with Abraham? What's that? One would think it doesn't have anything to do with it, but Stephen was accused of heresy. He was accused of speaking against the temple, of speaking against the law, and so people were pretty upset with him. He was hauled before the Sanhedrin and was officially charged and given a chance to answer. Incidentally, this... should I say this? Should I say that? I don't want to get off track. So it seems to me that Stephen's defense is really an incitement to murder. He gives a history lesson for a good while, and then he punctuates it, he concludes it with some very provocative, very incendiary charges that I can't help but think he knew would provoke the kind of response that it provoked. And again, we're not going to get off track here, but if you look at the conclusion and the way that's described and how Stephen behaves, it is not far-fetched to believe that Stephen expected and knew what was going to happen. Like, he accepted his role as the first Christian martyr. he looks into heaven and sees the Son of Man, and he says it out loud. I mean, they just, grind their teeth and yell and close their ears and rush on him. It's one of these defenses where he lulls them to sleep, it seems, for a while, because he's just repeating history that they would not have disputed. And so what does this, Stephen, what does this have to do with your defense? That's another point, is that he never really gets out to defending himself. He just goes on the attack and says, you guys are behaving now just like your fathers did, the way they responded to God, the way they responded to the prophets. Anyway, in this history lesson, and this happens with Saul of Tarsus, Paul the Apostle. It happens with Paul in his letter to the Romans. It happens with Paul in his letter to the Galatians. It happens in a number of cases where inspired writers or characters who are recorded speaking add some detail to the original account that's recorded in the Old Testament. And so we're going to see that. The high priest said, "Are these things so?" And Stephen said, "Hear me, brethren and fathers. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran, and said to him, 'Depart from your country and your relatives and come into the land that I will show you.' Then he departed from the land of Chaldeans and settled in Haran. And from there, after his father died, God removed him into this country in which you are now living." Now, one of two things are true. I think this is logically, as we have. One of two things are true. Either Stephen is inspired and has some revelation that was not in the text. Maybe it's three possibilities. The third possibility could be that that tradition and other sources of information had established by the time Stephen was there that this had happened. Or the third possibility, he's confused. He's mistaken. He didn't read Genesis, right? And he got it all scrambled. And he's quoting. You see in your text in verse 3 that the type is set apart so that it's a quote from the Old Testament. And where's it a quote from? Genesis 12, right? 12:1. So what I choose to believe is that Stephen was inspired. We know he had the Holy Spirit. I believe that he was called by God to be the first martyr, and so this was all arranged and contrived for Stephen to be accused and make a defense, and he makes a marvelous defense, and he dies so well, he dies so nobly, he dies in faith. It's a glorious thing. It's a beautiful thing. And so he has information from God, from the Holy Spirit, that is not explicitly, literally explained in detail in the original Genesis account. And so what we have, according to Stephen, is that Abram was called twice. The reason Terah picked up and moved the family is because God called Abram and said, "Get up and pick up all your stuff and your family and get up and move, and I'll tell you where you're going." And then, years later, probably years later, after they'd been in Haran for a while, lost the father, God calls him again. But Stephen is very clear from the breakdown of the geography, the sequence of events, quoting of the scripture, that God called him from Ur of the Chaldees. Is that a revelation to anybody? Is that news to anybody? Did everybody already know that? Okay, that was a big deal to me, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when I was like, wow, he called him twice. Which means it got up, picked up and just up all his stuff. The family, they moved where they weren't sure they were going, with no more plan than just, it's going to work out, it's going to be great, and I'll show you. Another detail, and I would say Joshua subtly, it's not as explicit, but Joshua is confirming Stephen before Stephen lived, okay? Go to Joshua chapter 24. Joshua 24. Now this is where he has gathered the people in Shechem. Shechem, that was a significant town in the life of Abraham. And this is after, obviously, the 40 years of wandering, and Moses has died, and they've done the blessing and cursing on Mount Ebal and Gerizim, and he is calling them together again. He's assembled the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summons the elders, the leaders, the judges, and the officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. I'm in Joshua chapter 24, verse 1. Now, verse 2. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, Yahweh, the God of Israel, says." Now, wait a minute. I thought Joshua was a military leader. I thought he was a commander. He's not the lawgiver, right? That's already happened. Moses already took care of that. Joshua was also a prophet. He was a spokesperson for God. And Joshua, standing before the people, claims that Yahweh has told me a message. And here's the message. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River. Now, where is that? Is that in Haran? No, that's Ur of the Chaldees. And worshipped other gods. We'll come back to that. And then verse 3. This is, again, Yahweh talking. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Boom. Joshua is giving the same report, that even while Abram was living beyond the rivers, God called him and took him and moved him. I think it's an interesting notice. Worshipped other gods. Now it does say that your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, worshipped other gods. So technically, I think if you look at the grammar, it does not literally technically say, single out Abraham and say that he worshipped other gods. But you can certainly reach that conclusion from the straightforward meaning of the language, which is your ancestors, plural, including Terah and his family, worshipped other gods. I don't know what to make of this, frankly, because I'm not sure what it means. What I mean by that is, idolatry is a serious charge to level. I don't want to be highly charging based on a statement that, admittedly, in my view, has some flex to it and not specific. I think it's true, which certainly Terah worshipped other gods. Maybe the family generally worshipped other gods. And if that's true, and Abram worshipped other gods, at the very least we can say that I'll say about that. There are certain much about the midrash. I see referenced in a very old, not as old as Abraham, but is an old pre collection of writings, and it's in the Jewish tradition. It's also in the Muslim tradition. As a young boy, his father owned a shop. He went off hunting, left Abram in charge of the shop. Some man came in. The man didn't have a good and left. Then this woman came. He couldn't afford an idol, but she brought this fruit and hair, bring the idols. And so, multiple idols and took the put in the set it up with the big idol. And when his dad got back, he's like, "What in the world? What have you done? What happened?" And Abram said, I didn't do it. This lady brought some fruit as an offering for idols. And the idols, they were working out who should get the fruit. And they smashed each other up to bits, and the only idols left. Each other up, they're just idols. And to me, that sounds like, wow, that's a lot of detail. It's not in the scripture. I think that's probably retro created. Just way up here, rightly so in our minds as a great man of faith. The thought that he worshiped, just like, wow, how can this be? And so my guess is that some legend and some stories were built up to explain that the family was in idols, but Abram, he distinguished himself, and from an early age he separated himself. Again, I can't prove there's no basis in truth. I just have to say that there is this statement. Joshua makes a statement that your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abram and Nahor, worshipped other gods. And so at the very hand here, and then Meredith. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah, and it's not just Rachel. Okay, so there are several references in Genesis and into Exodus that suggest that the having household idols continues on to, not surprising, it continues on into the Judges, but it's a recurring thing where some people that you would not expect to be carrying along trinkets and statues and household gods and idols doing just that. So that is the call, and it's not just one call. It was 2 calls. The call originally is from a very far away place, Ur of the Chaldees. I meant to look up a map search on Ur to Haran, and then Haran to Damascus. But we're talking hundreds of miles, right? And how do they travel? You know, they're walking and they're riding camels, donkeys, and animals like that. They're not going any faster than how fast an animal can walk or stuff. So that would take a good while to make that trip. So as I think of at least 2 components, one is the fact that there's good reason to think his life, again, or that the environment he comes from, and God calls him, and he answers the call. The second thing is just the interruption and the out of the blue but the voice, the word of this God to direct you, that you pick up, change all your plans, drop all your plans, all your stuff. I mean, can you imagine how some of the conversations went? I mean, was there anybody in the family who said, what? In the cradle of civilization, we're living in, an important of the civilization at that time, right? So everything's great. Reflections, thoughts, comments, his faith, and what that means to you, and how that should impact us. Yes, sir. Yeah. All we know is that his father was 70 years old when he had him. And they figured 75 by the time he left. Good while. I suppose I'm not the only one who's one. If you're the God of the universe, and you've created the whole universe and the whole world and the human race, and you've had sin, and you've destroyed the whole world except for 8 souls one time because of sin, and you have this plan to redeem mankind, picking one man promised to, going to be the headwater for all this downstream blessings and all, and you're going to work out your plan through this, and then through this family, and then through this nation. Pretty important choice. Pretty important choice. Now, Paul does, a marvelous job in Romans, 9, 10, 11, talking about the choice of God, and it's a sovereign choice. Abram, he picked Isaac, not Ishmael. He picked Jacob, not Esau. And Paul goes down. It is a sovereign choice. It had nothing to do with the people. He picked Jacob while they were in the womb to prove that it was not based on anything they did. It was his sovereign choice. I think that doctrine there suggests that he picked. There are other teachings in the Old Testament telling, Moses and other the prophets telling Israel, if you guys think God picked you because you're special, you are mistaken. You are great, mighty. You're a relatively small nation. As far as nations go, you're a pretty small nation. It's true that God turned one man and one woman who were childless, had one miracle baby, and from them flowed millions and millions of people, right? Still, compared to China, small nation. Israel compared to Syria and Egypt and other nations around, still a small nation. So the God, through his spokespersons in the Old Testament, go out of their way to disabuse the Israelites, because many of them thought very well of themselves. It's not because you're special. It's not because you're righteous. It's not because you're holy. It's not because you're faithful. It's not because you're impressive in any way. God made a promise to a man. He swore, he made an oath, and he's going to stick with his promise. That's why you are who you are. And so I've wondered, did God call some other guy and he didn't answer? And then he called a second guy and he didn't answer. And then he called a third guy and he didn't answer. And eventually, somewhere along the line, he calls Abram, and Abram answered. And he said, "This is the one." I don't know. God doesn't reveal it. I like to think, because God is sovereign and can see the beginning, the end, he can see the end from the beginning, and vice versa, right? That he didn't have to, pick somebody, and he picked the person. If you want to know how he respond. Again, we don't get those peeks behind the veil. But what we are revealed, what is disclosed, is pretty impressive. That God is sovereign. He's going to work out this plan of redemption. He's going to save us by grace through faith. It means giving your life to God and for him, doing whatever he asked you to do. And the start with this man who possibly was an idol worshiper, worshiped other gods, his family did at least, plucks him from 2 different places, is very impressive. So, whatever it is God's asking you to do, whatever God's asking you to endure, stack it up against this. God has the right. He is sovereign. Your life is in his hand. You have breath because he gives it to you. You wake up every day because he allows that to happen. Exist to glorify him, to please him, to do whatever it is he wants you to do. And in Abram's case, God felt perfectly comfortable saying, Abram, get up and move. I'll tell you where you're going. Abram, get up and move again. Take your whole family, all your stuff. I'll tell you where you're going. The sojourn. Here's a map. And I have David, remind me. Matthew, remind me. What do I push to get a light? There it is. Whoop. So Chaldees, he could not go right over here. Desert. So this is the, and I picked a map that was relatively simple. There's other maps that had all kinds of highways and travel ways and stuff like that. But this was the Fertile Crescent where, secular historians believe, some of the great civilizations early, 4,000 plus years before Christ. So, Ur of the Chaldees, later Babylon. So he would have come up this way, around, and settled in Haran. So that would have been the first leg of the trip. And then down through Damascus is mentioned, and then down into this little sliver of land, Canaan. Of course, he goes to Egypt, and then back into Canaan. So that's kind of the big picture. And then here it mentions some of the specific places: Shechem, Bethel. Not that I don't think he went to Jerusalem, but who was from there? Melchizedek, yeah. Hebron, Beersheba, and then this Zoa over in Egypt are all places that are mentioned. Here's a better map, bigger map that someone came up with. Oh, I'm I forgot. The light doesn't transport. So this is someone's attempt to kind of trace his steps. Of course, there's not. It would be a bunch of like swirly lines like this because he moved around a lot here. So I found this pretty good website that mapped out his travels. The problem is it wouldn't let me print. It wouldn't let me screenshot. Now, I'm a doofus when it comes to technology, so maybe I just couldn't figure it out, but I tried several different times to just print the thing, and at the end I was taking pictures of this, okay? So we go from Ur of the Chaldees, we've already looked at that pretty thoroughly. He goes to Haran in Mesopotamia, first stopping place. Then we get to Damascus, was a great city in the ancient world, and it was located in ancient Syria. Abraham and his nephew Lot had departed and followed the lead of the Lord. They moved southward and passed by the city of Damascus along the way, and it might have been at this time that Abraham secured his servant Eliezer. This is recorded in Genesis chapter 15. To Abraham again and confirmed his promises. So another iteration of the promises. This is a fascinating thing that happens throughout Abraham's lifetime, is that God appears to him multiple times. He repeats the promise, and he elaborates on the promise. So by the time you're done, you can patch those all together, and you get the full scope of the promises that he made to Abraham. It was here that Shechem, that Abram built the first altar to God, in Genesis chapter 12, verses 6 and 7. Bethel would be next. He continued his journey southward and came to a mountain near Bethel, where he built a second altar. That's in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 8. We don't know how much time is passing. It's just a snapshot, little bits of his wanderings. He's a pilgrim, a sojourner. He admits that several times. We come to Egypt. Abraham and his family journeyed southward through the land of Canaan, and a major famine hit and migrated to Egypt. In Egypt, Abraham lived his own life and was expelled from the land. The king of Egypt feared Abraham because of a dream and allowed him to leave with all of his possessions. So again, another one was bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. Even when Abraham is being kind of ornery and acting not so much out of faith, but out of fear, he still is blessed. We're back to Bethel. In Genesis chapter 13, 1 through 9, Abraham and his nephew Lot, but on account of strife between their herdsmen, they parted. Those storm clouds toward Sodom, and Abraham left the desirable Sodom and Gomorrah and went to Hebron in Mamre, where he heard again from the Lord, built another altar. This is in Genesis chapter 13, verse 10 through 18. Interesting note, Hebron was one of the oldest cities in ancient Canaan. It was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt, according to Numbers chapter 13. Then he goes to Dan. 4 kings of the east came to Canaan and were united under Chedorlaomer of Elam and made war against the 5 kings of Canaan. And in their conquest of the Jordan Valley, they captured Lot as a prisoner of war. And when Abraham heard of it, he pursued the 4 kings and overtook them at Dan and defeated them, Lord. This is in Genesis chapter 14. He had assembled an army of 318 men. So that travel was provoked by trying to rescue his nephew Lot. Now we're on place number 10, Hobah. Abraham and his family of servants smote the army of the 4 kings of Chedorlaomer and chased them to Hobah, which was located near Damascus. So we're all the way back up near Damascus. Lot and all the people with them were rescued, including their belongings. Then we have a reference to Salem. After this battle, as he's returning from this battle, he passed through Salem and was met by a man named Melchizedek, whose name means King of Righteousness. We know the story of Melchizedek and that very brief episode, that very brief interchange, where Melchizedek gives him some bread and wine, and Abraham gives Melchizedek 1/10 of all the spoils from the victory. And so the Hebrew writer infuses a whole lot of meaning from this very mysterious kind of phantom appearance from this mysterious character who just shows up on the scene. Then we're back to Hebron. When Abraham finally returned to Hebron, God reminded him of his covenant with him and changed his name from Abram to Abraham. This is in Genesis 15 and Genesis 17. During his stay at this place, Ishmael was born. We're in Genesis chapter 16 now, and the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. Genesis 18 through 19. Then we go to Gerar, G-E-R-A-R. Abraham left Hebron and for a time sojourned among the Philistines in Gerar, which was in southern Canaan west of Beersheba. It was in Gerar that Abraham deceived King Abimelech. Similar story. Then we're back to Sheba, and then the last few places, Moriah, where he has to take a 3-day journey because God calls him, says, Abraham, you know that son, only son, the one you love? I want you to take him 3 days. I'll show you the place, and I want you to offer him as a burnt offering. So there's Moriah, then back to Beersheba, and then finally Hebron, where the cave of Machpelah is. And he buys for 400 shekels of silver a plot of land with a cave so he can bury his wife Sarah. So what we'll pick up next time, and this is Sam White, okay? Sam White gave me this, and I'll come up with a better version of this. It's really good on the computer, but I think he did this, where he took Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and he took the Bible, the scriptures, and he kind of mapped out a timeline. So I'll come up with a more legible version of that. But I just want to spend a few minutes looking at how many years passed as Abraham is wandering and waiting for this son that was promised. Thank you.